We are ready to begin. To start off with, my name is Julia Kaufman, and I am one of the members of the Menorah Project Committee. I just wanted to start off by thanking everybody for joining us on this cold evening. I think one of the small pros of COVID is that we don't all have to go out in the cold tonight to be together. If you will just indulge me a little before Talia begins, I wanted to share a little bit about the background of the Let There Be Light program that we are doing. As you will learn over the next hour or so, the 7-branch menorah is one of the most enduring symbols of the Jewish people. Our Berenger sanctuary has many extraordinary symbols of our tradition and our history. We have our beautiful stained glass windows, our 10 commandments, the Jerusalem stone that is on our bima, but we do not have any menorahs. Most synagogues do have menorahs in their sanctuaries. So to continue beautifying our sanctuary, we have embarked on an effort to create our own uniquely designed glass mosaic menorahs. The artwork is based on Ben Shon's menorah prints that were in a Haggadah that Rabbi Weinberg used when he was younger. And Nancy Stanley is one of the members of our committee, and she has worked to put together these arts, the mosaics, so that they kind of match the coloring in our synagogue, and they are going to be on the large kind of open areas on either side of the bima. This project serves multiple purposes, one of which is to bring us together as a community for these education sessions, and then eventually, when it is socially safe, for us to come together and dedicate these new pieces of art in our sanctuary. The second is an endeavor to raise money for the synagogue. This is our only major fundraiser for the past 2 years. Everybody that has already donated, we want to thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And anybody that is still interested in participating, we have various levels of giving. And if you want to go to the Anshai Torah website, you can find out more information. I'd like to recognize the other members of the committee, myself, Debbie Rajanov, Nancy Stanley, Jeanette Pincus, Marcy Kahn, and then our very own Talia Kushnick, who you're going to hear from in just a minute. And I just want to say that it has been such a joy to work with all of them, and we've had a really great time, and we really hope that you enjoy the art and the programs. Now on to you, Talia.
Thank you so much. I just want to echo what Julia had said, that it's been really just an honor and a pleasure to work on this committee and to be part of this project. And I'm also just really excited to be together with you tonight and having the opportunity to learn together. So I have to admit that before I started kind of doing research for this project, I really didn't know much about the menorah. I mean, I knew the basics, but in terms of details about its history or its significance to our people, I really didn't know a lot. And so it's been fun for me to learn all of this, and I'm really excited to share it with you tonight. And I think this one is really, really interesting. So we should just kind of dive right into it. So the menorah really has a very rich history. It has been part of the Jewish landscape since biblical times, basically since the beginning, and it has followed us through our history. Where there are Jewish people, there are menorahs, and we're going to explore that, and we're going to look at that in depth tonight. But it's more than just that. The menorah really tells our story. It has been with us through it all, through our highest highs and our lowest lows. The menorah has been by our side throughout that entire time. And so much of who we are and what we have experienced can be embodied in this one symbol. So for those of you that were with us last week for the 789 session, you were introduced to Dr. Stephen Fine, who is kind of the preeminent Torah scholar of our time. We're going to spend a lot of time with him tonight. He's going to kind of guide us through what we're doing. So I want to just start out, I'm going to share my screen right now. I want to start out with something that he wrote that I think really encapsulates what we're looking at here. So he writes, the menorah is the longest continuously used religious symbol in Western culture. Very cool, right? Because it's ours. It's a living and transforming object of memory, beginning in antiquity and continuing through the medieval world to our own. It is a beloved artifact, one whose significance has transformed and continues to transform in our own times. So I want to unpack this a little bit, because what he's saying here is that the menorah is not just a candelabra. It's also not just an artifact that was described and designed by God and given to us. It is so much more. It is a testament and a witness to our journey as a people in our nation. As he says, a living, breathing object of memory. So tonight we're going to do two things, and we're going to really break down what he wrote in this piece, and that's going to guide us through our time together. So first, we're going to look at the history of the menorah. What does it mean to have something that is the longest continuously used religious symbol in Western culture? What does that mean when we're looking at it in real life? And two, we're going to explore this, I just think, fascinating quote of his, a living and transforming object of memory. What does that mean? And how can we relate that to us? So let's start with the historical piece. We have to start in the beginning, right? We're first introduced to the menorah in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, when God describes exactly what the menorah should look like to Moshe so that he can build it and put it in the tabernacle. It is then in the tabernacle with us as we travel through the desert. When the first temple is built, there are menorahs in the temple. There are menorahs in the second temple. So, kind of during our foundational time, the menorah is with us in a very, very real way. Let me just share my screen again. So here we can see this is our earliest depiction of the temple menorah. And this is from 140 BCE. It's a Hasmonean coin from the time of King Antigonus. And this is a depiction of the temple, the menorah that was used in the second temple, right? So we're seeing it in coins here, which were common at the time to take kind of important images and put them in coins. And while these might be the earliest depictions that we have, they are by no means the most famous. So if we think about it, what comes next, right? What comes after the destruction? The second temple is the destruction of the second temple. And we have then the Arch of Titus, right? So the Arch of Titus is really kind of the most famous, the most well-recognized image of the temple menorah. And we're going to look at it in a minute, but first I just want to talk a little bit about what the arch is. So the Arch of Titus was built in 81 CE by the Emperor Titus's younger brother, the Emperor Domitian, and it commemorates the Roman victory over Jews, but really over the Jewish God, right? It's the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem, the exile of the Jewish people. And the menorah relief that we're going to look at in a minute depicts a triumphant procession from 71 CE when the Romans brought back the temple artifacts to Rome. So let's look at this. Sorry, I just keep going back and forth. Okay, and we're going to talk with our own Stephen Fine again. So he writes, Titus may have thought that removing the menorah from Jerusalem in 70 CE would break or at least tame the Jews. Instead, the menorah prevailed as a major symbol of Judaism from Second Temple period coins around Jerusalem, which we just saw, to Mosaic synagogue floors, from tombstones where a menorah identified a Jewish body, to symbolic designs in medieval rabbinic commentary on the Torah. So the arch menorah we see becomes really the de facto image of a menorah. We don't have the menorah anymore from the temple, so we have this image. We're not 100% sure what the temple menorah actually looked like, but we have this that we assume was rendered after the actual menorah, and so this has kind of stayed with us. And after this time, when we had when the Arch of Titus was built, this symbol lasted for the Jewish people. And it kind of took on a life of its own. And we start seeing menorahs pop up all over the ancient Near East. So the question is, why? Why are we so drawn to the menorah? What is it about this symbol that really, as Fine is describing here, kind of spread? We're seeing it in all these different walks of life. What is it about it that really made it so special and so long lasting? We're going to read another text here from Sean Burris, who writes, the popularity of the menorah is best explained as the result of several factors. First, the menorah was a prominent sacred vessel in both the temple and in ancient synagogues. Furthermore, the menorah was easily the most distinct and recognizably Jewish object in antiquity. The Jewish God was imageless, and the menorah had the advantage of being simple in form, easy to depict, and unique to the Jewish religion. So here we're really talking about two main things. He's outlining two main reasons why the menorah became such a popular icon and symbol in our Jewish tradition. So first is that it had a really important place in our religious tradition, in the tabernacle, in the temples, having a significant and prominent role when it was in the temples. And then also we know that as Jewish people, part of our commandments, we do not worship images. We do not put an image of God up in our sanctuary or in our holy spaces, but we do include religious artifacts in these places. That has always been part of what we do in our holy spaces. And so a menorah, which as he's saying, is kind of easy to copy, right? It's simple in form, and it's important, and it's not threatening because it's not an image of God. Makes sense that this would be something that would kind of follow us throughout our history. So what I want to do is I want to kind of take a tour through time and space and look at the way menorahs have really followed us through our history. So we see them first, like we've kind of already looked at, in Jerusalem. Then they spread through to other places in Israel. And then they spread really all over. So let's take a look at that together. I'm going to share my screen again. And this time, I'm going to need your help. So let's look at these three images that we see on the top of the menorah, okay? So we have the menorah on a tomb in Tiberias, so northern Israel. Then in the 4th century, we see it in Sardis in Turkey, which is now Turkey, and then also in Rome. So can somebody tell me why they think that these three images are so remarkable? You can raise hands. I'll scroll through if anybody has any ideas. If I see any hands, I will call on you. So just these top three. What about the top three is just strikes you as being interesting or kind of mind-blowing. Bonnie, yeah. Bonnie, I think you have to.
Okay. Well, the one in Rome, I'm not familiar with that particular image, but I know there's an arch in Rome that the Jewish people were brought as slaves from Israel to Rome, and they wanted themselves to be identified as Jewish people in Rome. And so in this arch, they made the image of a menorah.
Is that the Arch of Titus that you're talking about?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was right. I think that was in the 4th century, wasn't it?
Well, the Arch of Titus was built in 81 CE.
No, well, this was, I think, right after what the one I'm talking about was after my mind, where the Jews committed suicide. I can't think right now at this time of night. That was in the 4th century, I believe.
Okay.
And I was just there last year. Oh well, sorry.
Masada.
Masada. Thank you, Warren.
Oh, in Masada. Okay.
Masada. Wasn't that in the 4th century?
I think it was earlier than that, but I can't tell you for sure.
Okay. But anyway, that's what I thought of because I know it's in Rome.
Okay, Gilda. Yeah.
So I'm not really good with dates at all, so I'm just pulling this out of the air. But is it at those times were we already scattered and in diaspora? And therefore these are depicting something that's very special to us as a people, and yet as a people we were spread all over the place and not together worshiping and being a people as we had been before.
Totally. That's what I was thinking too. So I want to kind of look at these 3 things, and there are 3 things that really stood out to me in looking at them that really set them apart. The first is that what kind of, Gilda, what you were alluding to is that these places are not close to each other. We have Israel, we have Turkey, we have Rome, and this was a time when it wasn't easy to travel. So, these places were significant distance away from each other. That's one thing. Another thing that struck me is that the people, the Jews in these 3 places spoke different languages. And we have to assume that they also had they lived in different cultures. Things were different in each of these places. And then the third thing that struck me is that the menorahs we see here serve very different purposes. One is on a grave, really to mark it as a Jewish grave. And the other 2, they have, utilitarian purposes, but different. So what kind of stood out to me is that, like what you were saying, Gilda, we're seeing here that Jewish people spread out, speaking different languages, living different lives, were still uniting around common symbols. And the menorah is that symbol. You could find it, like I said before, where there are Jews, there are menorahs. And we're seeing that from really, really long time ago, that they were already bringing this very important and significant symbol of our Jewish tradition with them wherever they were going and making it a part of their daily lives. So if we continue to kind of just look through these images, we have a ring from the 5th century. We have some synagogue mosaics in Israel, which some of these you can actually see. If you go to Israel, you can visit them. We have a ketubah from the 11th century, a children's Hebrew primer from the 12th century, a menorah stone that could have been used to decorate a synagogue or a home, a Jewish home in the 14th century, a kashrut seal from 17th century Ukraine, and then a gambling token from what is currently Thailand. So we're seeing just from these images, and really, these were just some images that I chose, but there are hundreds of them. We can just see how prevalent and widespread the image of the menorah is. And still to this day, I mean, we are adding ourselves to this exact narrative by putting a menorah up in our sanctuary. So I want to argue that we are the people of the menorah for two reasons. One, because it is our history. Literally, it is our history. And we just saw how it followed us through our history, how it is still with us today. And two, it is now time to explore what Fine said about it being a living artifact that has meant different things to us at different times. And I think that really the best way to drive this message home and to see what he means when he's talking about this is to take a deep dive into the Arch of Titus and to really explore the menorah relief and the Arch of Titus, and to see how through history, this menorah relief, this part of the Arch of Titus that shows the menorah, has dramatically changed its meaning to us as a people, as we have changed as a people throughout history. So what we need to do is we need to look very closely at the Arch of Titus, at the menorah relief. So let's look at what we see here. So we see Roman soldiers carrying their spoils of war back from Jerusalem to Rome. So the temple artifacts from the temple that they had just destroyed, they're taking it back into Rome. And this, we see, you can see the trumpets here, this is a big parade. This is very, very exciting. And we see various artifacts. Most prominent amongst them is the menorah. So one of the reasons that we can imagine why the menorah is so big and so easily identifiable on this relief of the Arch of Titus is because by looking at that one symbol, we know exactly what this is trying to tell us. We know that this is telling us that the Romans defeated the Jewish God, right? This was a holy war. And their God defeated the Jewish God, destroyed the temple, destroyed Jerusalem, exiled the Jewish people. Just by looking at this one image, we see all of that context and all of that subtext just by looking at this. So this arch and this menorah relief on it really has stood as a reminder to us as a Jewish people of what we had and what we lost. Some of our most precious items are being displayed right in front of us, taken away. And this was, a huge, horrible thing that happened to our people in history. Our exile, this just horribly traumatic. And here it's being just out there for everyone to see. And the arch itself has a really fascinating history. And it was used physically to subjugate and demoralize Jews throughout history for a long time. So what we're going to look at now is in the Middle Ages, there was a custom in Rome that when a new pope was selected, was appointed, the pope would, have this big parade, and the leader of the Jewish people would have to hand the Pope a Torah scroll as a way of identifying himself and our people as the Jewish people. And when the Pope would receive this Torah, he would drop it on the ground. Another way of just showing where the Jews stood in relation happened underneath the Arch of Titus. So this was just one way that not only was this image depicting a trauma, but bad things happened to Jewish people in that very spot, right underneath. So there was really no way at the time to get away from this history that was following us and that was just beating us down. And also when we were part of this society where we were really, it was very clear. It was shown to us in lots of different ways where we stood. But if we know one thing about Jewish people throughout history, it is that we're survivors and that we're resilient. So as we began to feel that way, stronger and more secure, we reimagined what was happening with the menorah relief and reimagined what the message of the menorah relief was trying to tell us. And so let's go back to Fine here. He writes, at least from the Renaissance on, some Jews chose not to see Romans carrying the menorah at all. Rather, they imagined that the menorah bearers are actually Jews, members of a strong nation, Jewish prisoners bearing their holy vessels into captivity with their own strength. So this is a small, subtle change, but it's very significant. We are injecting hope. We are not just at the mercy of those who conquer us, but we are part of the narrative. And as long as we are part of the narrative, we have the ability to change it, at least to change the way that we relate to it and the way that we feel it. And that is what was happening here. And this is what Fine is talking about, how this is a living and transforming object of memory. This is us doing it. We are actually transforming what this means to us. But it didn't stop there. So let's look at this. He writes, in 1947, Holocaust survivors in Rome marched through the arch from west to east, symbolically carrying the menorah back to Zion as they celebrated the United Nations vote to establish a Jewish state. They turned the Arch of Titus from a symbol of Jewish degradation into an icon of hope for a better Jewish future. Same arch, same menorah relief, same images, but we were changing. And so our understanding of this changed too, dramatically. I mean, this is very, very different. Before we had just a little tweak in the interpretation, which might have been significant and meaningful to us at the time. But here we are literally reclaiming this image as an image of strength, walking back through it in the opposite direction, taking back what was ours. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible to think about that. And it's still happening now. It's not done. So let's look at this one. So here we have two images. On the left, we have a pamphlet for the Liberation Medal, which was made in 1958, the 10-year anniversary of the State of Israel. And it's a little bit hard to see, but if you look closely at the background of the medal, so this is the paper that it came on, you can see here the menorah relief, right? You see the Roman soldiers, then the Jewish prisoners carrying the menorah, but these people that we see are morphing into Israeli soldiers who are marching to defend and protect our homeland, right? So here we are going all the way back. It's coming full circle, and the menorah is there. When the arch was first built, it was when we were exiled from Israel, when the Second Temple was destroyed and we were out of there. Now we're back, right? And we are still using this same symbol. And if we look on the right-hand side, we have the emblem of the State of Israel, which proudly and prominently depicts the arch menorah as the center of this emblem. So here, one symbol that has followed us for a long time and has meant lots and lots of different things to us throughout our history, throughout this time. And we're still doing it, right? Here's our menorah. So the story is continuing with us. As we add our menorah to our sanctuary, we are joining our ancestors in using the image of the menorah to beautify our sanctuary, to define ourselves as Jews, and to define ourselves as the people of the menorah. So that is all I have for tonight. But if anybody has any questions, I am happy to try to answer them. And if there are no questions, I am going to assume that you are all experts on the history of the menorah. Yeah, Dan.
I have one question. I noticed in the some various images that you shared, like on that sheet with the 6 images, that the menorah seems to always have like 3 legs it's depicted with. Is there some significance to that? I mean, even across the different centuries and places.
Are you talking about the base?
Yeah, the base of the menorah.
Okay, so then you definitely need to read Stephen Fine's book, because what we talked about last week is that like each piece of the menorah is described in great, great detail by God to Moshe, except there is no mention of the base. So there has been so much debate throughout history of what the base actually looks like. And, the menorah that we see on the Arch of Titus is just one artistic rendering. It could have been like that or not. So, if the way that it's depicted, there are probably different traditions that people have had throughout history of what they thought it was, but we really don't have, a specific idea of at least what the biblical menorah looked like. We can assume that the menorah from the Second Temple looked somewhat similar to what we see on the Arch of Titus, but also, I mean, there's just so much debate and conversation about what was actually on it. Like if you look closely at the arch base, there are like all these different animals, but we don't know if that was really what it looked like or not. So the base is just like, I guess, open for interpretation and debate, lots and lots of debate.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, Julia, I will hand it back over to you. But thank you. Thank you for being here and listening and learning. I hope that it was interesting and you learned something new. Like I said, I definitely learned a lot of new stuff when I was preparing for this, and I was just excited to share it with you. So thank you.
Again, thank everybody for coming tonight. If you were with us last week, you have now seen both of the Menorah project education sessions. So there's one about the mystical background of the menorah and then one about the historical. If you were not with us last week, next week on Thursday, February 18th at 7:30, and you can sign up on the Anshai Torah website, there is going to be another session about the mystical background of the menorah and the number 7 and what it all means to Judaism. So we would love for you to join us for that. You're welcome to join us again, even if you were here last week. And if you guys really enjoyed this, please spread the word to other people that there will be the opportunity for that program from last week, next week, and then this program will be repeating on March 3rd. And if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to any of us. And we want to thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again in the next few weeks if you weren't with us already.
Bye.